There was once a night when entire villages deliberately killed their fires, plunged homes into darkness, and disguised even their children, not to celebrate, but to hide from returning dead. Food offerings were not tradition, they were ransom. This was not myth, it was emergency protocol in Celtic Europe. The dead came home, and survival meant you played by their rules. That same night still exists today. We call it Halloween. What if it was never meant to be harmless, and still is not? Nightfall in ancient Europe brought a silence that was absolute. With the setting sun, homes lost their only source of light. No torches lined the roads, no lamps cut the darkness. Entire villages disappeared into shadow, each household sealed against whatever moved outside. The darkness was not just inconvenient, it was total, pressing in from every side. For the families, there was no way to explain sudden illness or the vanishing of a neighbor. A cough could become a death sentence. Livestock might sicken overnight, crops rot in the field, or a child slip away without warning. There were no doctors, no medicine, only patterns of loss that returned with the cold months. Every sound outside, a branch breaking or a distant howl, could be a sign of something crossing over. In this world, fear was not irrational. It was a survival instinct, shaped by years of watching people disappear and never return. The line between the living and the dead felt thin, not in storybooks, but in the air that filled every room after dark. When the season changed and the nights grew longer, anxiety spread from house to house. Children were kept close, doors were barred, fires were watched and then extinguished, not as ritual, but as a response to real nightly peril. The unknown was not a story told to frighten. It was the world itself, closing in as the light died. The ancient Celtic year was divided by a single, inescapable boundary. Warm months brought light, food, and safety. As the sun weakened, a different logic took hold. Time itself became dangerous. The colony calendar unearthed in France reveals a world measured by cycles of darkness and light. Summer was a time of gathering, winter a time of loss. November 1st stood at the very hinge, a threshold where the living world faltered. Samhain was not a festival, it was a warning. The year split was not just about weather, it was about the collapse of order. Summer's end meant the protections people relied on: sun, warmth, food, predictability, began to fail. The Celts believed that at Samhain the walls holding back chaos thinned. This was not a metaphor. The days grew short, the cold crept in, and the boundaries that kept the world safe weakened. Assemblies were called, not for celebration, but to confront the danger of the season. The entire community prepared for the possibility that something would cross over. Samhain was a failure point in the calendar, a moment when time itself could not be trusted. In this logic, the threat was not only outside in the night, it was woven into the turning of the year, waiting for its chance. At the heart of Samhain, entire communities gathered not in celebration, but in response to a threat they could neither see nor name. The first act was always the same. Every household allowed its fire to die. Darkness spread by design, erasing the signs of life from each home. Only then did people move together, assembling at the edge of their villages or atop ancient hills. Here, a single bonfire was kindled, its flames meant to protect, not to warm. The fire was communal, a signal that no one would face the night alone. Surrounding these fires, the work turned grim. Livestock were brought forward, not for feasting, but for sacrifice. Archaeological digs at sites like Neven Fort and Tlachtaga reveal layers of animal bone, charred and broken, deposited in pits beside the remains of great fires. The patterns, skulls split, long bones smashed, suggest more than simple slaughter. This was ritualized destruction, a way to offer both nourishment and allegiance to forces beyond human control. Some bones show signs of overkilling, multiple blows where one would suffice. This excess hints at a belief that ordinary death was not enough, that only through unmistakable violence could the boundary be held. While evidence for human sacrifice is far more elusive, medieval accounts whisper of crisis years when animals were not enough. The debate remains unsettled, but the logic is clear. When survival felt uncertain, the community acted as one, spilling blood into the earth, feeding the fire, hoping it would be enough to keep the dead at bay. Masks were not decorations. In the world of Samhain, they were a shield. The belief was simple. If the dead roamed, the living had to disappear. Visibility meant risk. To walk outside with your own face uncovered was to invite notice from something searching for warmth, memory, or a body to claim. Disguise was not a choice. It was a matter of survival. Records from Ireland and Scotland describe the rules of guising. Children and adults covered their faces with soot, animal skins, or crude masks made from bark and cloth. The goal was not to amuse, but to erase identity. The living moved through the night as shadows, voices muffled, footsteps careful. In some regions, entire groups adopted the roles of the dead, reciting ritual verses or songs that signaled their intent. Let us in, for we are the souls returned. This was mumming, a practice that blurred the line between visitor and spirit. The language was coded, the approach rehearsed. To speak as a ghost was to blend with the threat. The geyser asked for food or safe passage, not as themselves, but as a messenger from the other side. Anonymity was armor. Even names were left behind, replaced by masks and borrowed voices. Historical accounts show that the more convincing the disguise, the safer the traveler. The dead, it was believed, would not harm their own. To be mistaken for a spirit was to be overlooked, to pass through danger untouched. In this logic, survival depended on disappearance. The mask was not for play, it was for protection. On the threshold of winter, a different kind of bargain played out at the door. Souling was not a cheerful tradition. It was a transaction shaped by fear. Children and the poor, known as soulers, moved from house to house, reciting prayers for the dead in exchange for small spiced cakes. These soul cakes, marked with a cross and flavored with nutmeg or cinnamon, were more than food. They represented a payment, a token to keep misfortune at bay. Refusing a solar was not just denying charity, it was risking the unease that something might follow. In some places, the expectation was clear. No cake, no prayer, and perhaps no peace for the household. The line between blessing and threat was thin, and everyone understood the cost of being left out in the cold. The church did not attempt to erase these rituals outright. Instead, it overlaid its own calendar onto the old one, declaring November 1st as All Saints' Day and November 2nd as All Souls' Day. The names changed, but the behaviors remained. Bonfires continued as sanctioned vigils. Prayers for the dead replaced offerings to wandering spirits, but the exchange was familiar, remembrance in return for protection. Door-to-door visits became acts of charity, not appeasement. Yet the structure of the night, its processions, its disguises, its sense of collective defense, survived beneath new explanations. When Irish and Scottish immigrants carried these customs to North America in the 19th century, the logic adapted again. Turnips carved with faces became pumpkins, easier to find and hollow. The flickering light inside was not just decoration, but a signal, an old defense carried forward under a new name. No matter how light-hearted Halloween seems, its rituals still echo ancient fears, transformed, not erased. Today we inherit traditions built for survival, not celebration. The boundary between past and present grows thinner each year. Sometimes what we call harmless fun is just old fear wearing a new mask.